Well, welcome back, Phil.
Yeah, nice to be back. Well, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Did you have a good break?
I had a fantastic break.
Yeah.
Really was great fun.
Managed to recharge a bit?
A bit, yeah. Recharge all good, all set for an interesting year ahead, I think.
Great. Well, before we talk about the year ahead, I was
Yeah.
wondering maybe if I could cast your mind back to 2024 and what are your key reflections from last year?
Yeah, I think it's we entered the year last year, I think, in a pretty positive frame of mind in terms of, perhaps now we've got over the pandemic that things will start to settle down a bit. But actually, last year was quite a volatile year. We've had we've had all sorts of elections taking place, not just in the UK but around the world, and I think that's injected a certain amount of caution into the economy, and we've seen that from the growth figures, not just the UK but also in the Eurozone and other parts of the world. So it's been quite tough, and on top of that, we've had the geopolitical uncertainty with Ukraine and the terrible war that's going on there. We've also had the problems in the Middle East with the Palestinians and Israel and so on. So, I would say last year has been incredibly challenging for not just ourselves as a company, but also I think for our clients, and I suppose the two are connected. I think that the other big factor that's beginning to take hold is the whole advent of AI and how AI is influencing how we think and how we act and speak, and I don't know. It's sort of defining what is true and what isn't. And I think that there's a lot of debate at the moment about the destabilizing effect that you can have with sort of AI generated, news clips. And I think all of these things have an effect on uncertainty. So I would say that 2024, organizations and people have been very cautious about what the future is going to hold. And I think we're at a pivotal moment in terms of evolution. And if we're talking about sort of fairly macro level things, what is the future of humanity when we're starting to look at the impact of what technology is going to do?
Yeah.
I just think it's really interesting. There's a great book that I've been reading called Genesis, which is written by Henry Kissinger and two others. I can't remember their names actually, the ex-CEO of Google and Microsoft, talking about artificial intelligence, hope, and the human spirit. And some of the concepts that are being discussed in that book, I think, are going to be quite challenging in terms of how we operate as human beings in a world that's going to be affected hugely, I believe, by AI. So I think if 2024 we saw AI taking hold, coupled with the political and economic uncertainty, I think the future is going to be quite interesting in terms of how are things going to develop and how are we going to take advantage of the huge opportunities that AI will bring. But how's that going to affect our clients, how it's going to affect the way that they work and operate. But hopefully we will move into 2025 in a more predictable environment. But who
Do
knows?
you think so? I mean, 2024 has been a huge year for change on multiple factors, as you've just described. There been any, back to the key reflections, anything personally you want to reflect on, how you feel like you've managed that change, or how do you feel as a business, we've had to be enabled to kind of ride that
wave of uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. In many ways, I would say that 2024 was one of the toughest years that we've had to face. But when we start to look at the performance of the business in 2024 compared to preceding years, it's been stable. We've run a stable business. I know a lot of people in our field have struggled, really struggled this year. But actually, we've been pretty stable. And I think partly that's down to the type of business that we've built over the years. So our education business has been, pretty stable. It's been pretty predictable. The consulting business is feast or famine. That goes up and down. In spite of the prevailing winds, we've taken some pretty big bets on technology. So I'm really pleased that we've launched Phoebe towards the end of last year, which is our account planning toolkit. And we've seen the benefits of 2 years fairly hard work in building up our online platform as well. So, and also we took the decision that we would actually make a very important recruitment decision, which was to recruit a new head of consulting practice, who is starting with us next month, which we're really excited about. So I guess in spite of the market being incredibly difficult, I think that we've been quite bold in some of the decisions we've taken, sailing quite close to the wind with some of these decisions. But actually, I think it's setting us up in a really good place for next year. We'll have to see.
I certainly feel it's been a very innovative year. And I still feel the passion for sales education is there, and perhaps people have identified new skills and capabilities that they need to develop in order to manage, I guess, working in this environment that feels to me like the new norm. AI isn't going away. It's only going to advance, for example. Hopefully the political stability happens, but who knows? We got Trump talking about putting all these tariffs on everyone. I guess that brings me on to my next question is, looking ahead, looking at 2025, what are your reflections on 2025? What are your hopes?
The hopes, I think it's going to be much more peace in the world. Again, if I start off at a sort of macro level, that the world becomes a more peaceful place to live, and that politicians create a more conducive environment for people to do business. I have to say, as far as the UK is concerned, the early signs are that's not going to happen. With things like the national insurance impact that we can see is happening, is it going to drive inflation up? But I think the question that we need to ask ourselves is not so much what can the country do for us, therefore the politicians can do for us, but actually what can we do for the country? And I think that's something that entrepreneurs, in any situation that you have, there's an opportunity to be had. I'm quite excited about this next year. And I suppose because we're so closely linked to sales and growth, and everything that we're doing is to help companies grow, and companies will go through people growing. Because we're in sales, it's how can we help each individual that's on any of our programs improve their win rates deal by deal. And if we can make an impact on achieving a growth economy for the companies that are clients of ours, then I'm going to be very pleased with that result. And I think we're in a really good place to do that. We've got amazing, I think, cutting edge sales education, as you mentioned already. Very proud of the fact that we've managed to create such an incredible, it's really a sort of a new initiative as far as the UK is concerned in that space. And I think that's only going to strengthen next year.
Fingers crossed. So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, it's not. It's not doom and gloom. It's certainly not doom and gloom, but it's trying to navigate throughout all the change taking place. Where are the opportunities to, have a thriving business, and helping our clients navigate their business as well, which is important.
So what, if there's anything that excites you most, what is it about 2025 and why is that?
Well, I think that the transition that we're making into the whole kind of online, and in a way it's ed tech space, is really exciting. And what excites me about the future is how can we replicate the success that we've had with the academy, with the some of the technology solutions that we're bringing to the market, and how those solutions are actually going to help our clients increase their ability to win and succeed in the marketplace. The early signs are good. I mean, online, which we really only formally launched publicly, was done at the end of end of last year. Even though for 2 years we've been testing, building, trialing, the solutions with our clients. So I'm very excited. We think we've got a great formula for creating sort of online content in an engaging way. I think Phoebe is something slightly different, the account planning toolkit. It's going to be very interesting to see how AI is going to have an impact on how we can use, how Phoebe can be sort of developed using some of the exciting technology that's around. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got Jesus Alberola, who's coming to join us as our head of consulting. And he comes from an Accenture background. He's been head of strategic partnerships at Telefonica. He's held some massive roles. And we're incredibly lucky, I think, in a way, that Jesus has agreed to join us, in February. And I think that that's going to give us a much deeper appreciation of some of the sales transformation practices that we can build at Consalia. So, it's going to have a big impact to the team, I'm sure.
No, I have no doubt, and it's very exciting. And welcome, Jesus, for when you begin. I think at the first of
February.
1st of February.
Joins. Yeah.
Great stuff. But yeah, I agree. I think we've got something I've certainly noticed around online. There feels, finally, I feel like we cracked it and we're confident with the proposition, and we got all sorts of different modules. I wonder if you wanted to maybe not talk about every single module, but perhaps an example of some of the modules we've delivered for clients, just so people can have a flavour of what the content's about.
The modules vary from modules that address sort of personal values and belief systems, which is a core theme of all of our programs. And connected with that, this idea of how you choose to use your time and the sort of habits that, what are going to be the successful habits that you need to have in order to conduct yourself in a very professional way. And I guess at the beginning of the year, the idea of, what New Year's resolutions we're going to set, so this concept of taking some time to reflect upon the sort of values that you have and the habits, therefore, that you want to create to improve yourself is quite topical. we've got a fantastic range of modules that linked very much to our WVP methodology around sort of creative thinking and the deal-making process. And then we've got a brilliant finance essentials module, which I personally feel that is one of the most important knowledge areas that salespeople need to have, but few have it sufficiently to be able to engage with clients in a sort of commercial acumen way. We've got a sort of new module coming out quite soon around negotiation skills as well. So we are always going to be adding to the sort of online content of what we build. So at the beginning of building a big curriculum. But I think what makes the online module so powerful is that coupled with coaching, or that coupled with some of the other programs that we run, creates a fantastic sort of learning environment for individuals to have. Whether we take online to the extent we could run our undergraduate degree program entirely online, that may be sort of futuristic kind of thinking, but that will open up the degree globally.
I think in a previous podcast you may have alluded to that's the direction we may go in.
Well,
online.
I think I can see all of these modules clipping into what could be a very interesting alternative to classroom-based sales education. But I think we're sort of
working
towards that.
Working in that direction,
module by module, I'd say.
Great. Well, thank you for that, and hopefully that's useful. Bringing it back to 2025. Yeah. So what do you think sales professionals need to do in 2025 in order to be perceived in a better light from customers?
Well, it's interesting, this question, because we're about to embark on a global research project where we want to recalibrate how customers look at the sales profession. And the insights we'll get from that global research project is going to show us whether, the extent to which the needle has moved since the research was originally carried out, which is in 2004 to 2008. My gut feel is that potentially the pandemic has actually set us back as a profession a bit in terms of confidence in the engagement process. But I think the research is going to shed some fresh insights into, how customers see the sales function moving forward. But there are a number of things I think we need to sort of take into consideration. One is AI, that if you look at AI as a prospecting tool, we can all spot the AI-generated prospecting kind of LinkedIn messages that we get. And I think that organizations need to take heed of the negative impact that sort of technology can have if you try to automate it to the extent that it doesn't sound authentic. So how do we create authenticity in the sales process is something that should be, I believe, on the agenda for all clients in order for the sales profession to be perceived in a better light. I think at a leadership level, there's still a lot of management by fear that takes place in terms of sort of quota-driven sales practices, that if you don't hit targets, there's a lot of fear in sales organizations, and that's used, I think, in a negative sense to drive the wrong kind of behavior that will have an impact on customers. I think it's quite interesting whether the current favored remuneration systems for salespeople, which is commission-based, actually drives the kind of behavior that customers want to see from salespeople. We've often had this discussion internally at Consalia, is it fixed versus a sort of sales commission orientation? And we've always chosen not to pay commission based on sales because we want everything we do to be driven by what's best for the customer, not necessarily what's best from someone who's intent on selling a particular product or solution. And I'm sensing that more and more of our clients are beginning to question, particularly for the younger salespeople that are coming into the sales profession, with the cost of living and with other pressures that exist, whether the idea of low basic and high variable commission systems are the right things to have. So I mean, I'm just throwing this out there because I think that we need to recognize that the world has kind of changed. The whole environment has changed from what it was 20 or more years ago. The pandemic has, I think, created a lot of anxiety in the workplace. And I think it's important that the sales profession recognizes the mental health of salespeople, and the pressure that there is on people kind of to survive in a world that's changing so quickly and has become a more expensive place to live. So you've got financial pressures as well as sort of work-life balances and all of those sort of factors that I think are important. So if the sales profession can publicly kind of set the standards through which effective sales practice should take place, I think that would help. And this comes on to the independent institutes like the Institute of Sales Professionals and so on, to actually sort of fly the flag for ethical sales practice, I think is really important. So I don't know, there's lots of things I think we need to keep a focus on, which will help, I think, make sales be perceived in a positive light from customers. I don't know what your thoughts are.
There's a lot to unpack in that answer to that question.
There is.
I think it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, you've mentioned AI, you've mentioned the previous research that you did way back in 2004, and the research project we're currently doing. So just for anyone new to Consalia, Phil, you did your doctorate. The results of that research project highlighted that customers look for values in salespeople. You mentioned authenticity, that's one of them. Client centricity is another one, tactful audacity, and proactive creativity. So these are the mindsets that underpin everything that Consalia does. So what we're doing this year is working out, well, do those values, are they as important as when you did that research originally? And I just wonder if, you also mentioned AI, and I just wonder whether or not the human element within the sales process, that won't change, but where that human element interacts with the customer is probably going to change. And so how that manifests itself in how clients want to be sold to might be slightly different. But
it might do, yeah.
I just don't know.
I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, there's no doubt that you can use some of these tools to actually deepen your insights around the 4 values that you've just spoken about. So there's no excuse now for not being client-centric, because there's so many intelligence tools that you can use now to get to understand your client better. And it would be very interesting to see whether or not AI could be used to help with developing the kind of creative and tactfully audacious solutions that you could put in place with your clients. So this is a little what Phoebe is going to be kind of enabling, I think, account managers to do, is to live those values in a deeper way. But, there could well be different values that we identify. I mean, there's one.
Also, I think it will change maybe depending on what you're selling, right? Perhaps some instances people will appreciate more of a transactional sales process without having to speak to a salesperson. But if you are working at a sort of enterprise complex sales, I don't know, as an example, then actually the expectation of the salesperson from the client will be of huge importance as it is now, but maybe they're looking for even more proactive creativity, even more tactful audacity.
But you could argue that it's not just the individual contributor where those values are important, but it's the way the entire sales organization thinks. So if you take what you've just said about client centricity, and you take clients who don't want to interact with salespeople, then you've got to build technologies that will enable your clients to purchase your services without that engagement. You could say that is client centricity. You could also argue that if you build those systems such that they trigger ideas that the client hasn't asked for, like when they're working within the technology, that's proactive creativity. Mm-hmm. It may be the way that you trigger deals with customers. The way that you talk about pricing could be tactfully audacious. So I think the mindsets, can be applied whether you're talking about us as individuals or how a sales director will look at managing all the different channels, all the different go-to-market channels. So I think that my hunch is the mindsets are likely still to be important, but the way in which we lever the technologies is going to be different. And I think that's quite exciting, quite interesting, quite innovative.
I think if anyone's listening that is interested in taking part in this research, get in touch with us.
Yeah, we're really interested. We've reached out at our amazing GST event that we did last year, inviting people, if you've got any clients that you're working with that you would like to invite to take part in this research exercise, then get in touch with us. We're looking at starting the interview process in the first quarter of this year to finish by the summertime.
Yeah. Just before I move on to the next question, you also mentioned something that it might be quite controversial, especially if you're in sales, discussing KPIs and I guess the performance-related commission.
Yeah.
So often I think people are in sales because they can earn a paycheck, and it's and you can earn a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And the upside of what you can earn is, I think, very attractive.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see or hear if other people echo what Phil has just said around fixing salespeople's salary or having, or does sales always need that sort of purse string incentive to, it's the whole carrot and stick, isn't it?
Is that
what motivates you?
It is controversial. And I was at a research event hosted by the Warwick Business School in early December, where some of the research studies conducted by some of the academics there specifically looked at this concept of levers and, to what extent do financial incentives actually motivate salespeople? And I know that I was speaking in the minority then about this idea that, maybe it's not an individual kind of quota achievement that's important, but maybe it's a company-wide, maybe there could be different ways of incentivizing individuals to work based on KPIs that are broader than just what individuals do. But it's going to be debated forever, this one, I think. I've sort of gone round in circles on it. But at the end of the day, I mean, the premise is that if you put your customer first in all of your thinking, and then work back, what do we need to do in order to service our clients in the most ethical, the most professional way. And then ask yourself the question, what remuneration system do we need to have that's actually going to build that? Because if we're more successful with our customers, we'll all be more successful. I think that's probably the way to go about setting the systems in place to actually drive performance. But no, I know this is
open
slightly
for
controversial.
debate, but
it's for debate,
yeah.
but I think that's what we need. We need debate. We need talk about it. And I know that I've got one voice, but there are many others that will think differently to me. But
I saw just earlier on today just a fascinating article about NVIDIA and the employees that work there. A huge proportion of them have earned a phenomenal amount of money. But they are expected to work 7 days a week, and they're under a huge amount of pressure. But the reason why they stay is because of the financial incentives. Anyway, open to that debate. That's quite interesting. So thanks, Phil. As the CEO of Consalia, I guess this is, two parts. Any New Year's resolutions, and what are you going to stop doing, continue doing, and start doing?
Well, I think that I quite often come to this question about sort of making bold decisions. When I start to look at some of our clients, like, you could take clients like the Royal Mail Group, for example. They've taken some massive decisions around the way that they have built these super centres, in the country. They've made some very big bets on how they work with the unions. CEOs have come and gone there as a consequence of some of the actions they've taken. They're now being owned by a public company, Czech company. And then we've got other clients like SKF, for example, who've decided to sell their automotive business entirely. That's huge. Not sure what percentage of the turnover they had was automotive, but they felt they could create more value by making some pretty significant divestments. We've seen the same with Anglo American, splitting into two, in part to do with the BHP Billiton kind of hostile takeover. And when you start to look at the decision-making process that these companies have gone through in order to affect change, either protectionist strategies or expansion strategies, I come back to the question, well, what about Consalia? What are the, to what extent do we place big bets on different ideas and sort of developments? And obviously our circumstance, we're a small business, we're quite entrepreneurial, but we have less leeway to make decisions that could affect us financially adversely. But this is a sort of a slightly long way of sort of setting some context. And I think that one of the things that I challenge myself constantly is about being bolder and actually, for Consalia, we've not got too much more to prove, across all points of engagement in our business. So to what extent, as the CEO of Consalia, do we have the confidence in what we're doing to actually take big bets? And that could be to do with potential partnerships. It could be to do with product development kind of ideas. It could, I don't know. But I'm beginning to think that as Consalia evolves and as I personally evolve within Consalia, that perhaps my skills are going to be more suited to this slightly more visionary thinking about setting Consalia up for the future and that as a consequence of that, being proactive in actually looking for what the next big step for Consalia would be. So that's something I want to start doing. Yeah, I want to start, be bold, have the confidence in what we're doing. We've got nothing more to prove. Let's take proactive creativity and tactful audacity up a notch. Stop doing? I think that the part of the stop doing is for us to do with resource. It's that you can't work on the business and in the business at the same time, and it's an incredibly difficult sort of balancing position to be able to navigate both of those two things. We're not big enough for me to work on the business all the time, so I'll work in it. So I think that, again, taking on board Jesus is a huge step in allowing me to stop doing some of the things that could be considered to be sort of more operational and start doing some of the things that are slightly more visionary.
And continue. You've missed that one.
Continue. I mean, there's certain things I love doing. There's certain things I love doing at Consalia. Part of it's having fun, with the team, and our sort of GST events. I just love getting involved in those kind of flagship things that we do. I love being connected with the students as well. So I think that, I will always play a role in our sort of development programs. It might not be quite as big a role as it's been in the past, but I'd like to continue doing that if I could.
I think that makes sense. And I think that suits your skill sets as the CEO well.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and then finally, who is someone that you really want to have on the Sales Transformation podcast this year?
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the sort of tactful audacity kind of angle. I know George is going to be quite interested in what I'm about to say because somehow I've got to figure out a way of doing it. But we've done in the past trilogies. We've done a trilogy around resilience. We've done a trilogy around coaching on the podcasts. And what I'd like to do is actually invite some fairly prominent CEO level people to come onto the podcast and for them to talk about their take on sales transformation. Go back to this Forrester research that was done years ago about, the gap between strategy and execution is 18 months, and it's a long time. That often CEOs are sort of frustrated at how long it takes to take an idea and actually get it implemented. And we've seen that very much through, for example, some of our clients like SAP, for example, where they've been talking about going from on-premise to a service-related licensing concept with their technologies. It's taken, 9 years, maybe longer. So I'd like to kind of explore this notion of sales transformation through the lens of CEOs. And it would be great if we could get Emma Gilthorpe, who's the managing director of Royal Mail, to come on, Richard Gustafsson, CEO of SKF. Companies that are going through this sort of massive change, but exploring the topic of sales transformation, I think through the lens of CEOs is something that I think would be great to do. Getting their time to join us. Mm-hmm. We know that will be hugely difficult, but and I've just mentioned a few from the community of clients that we're kind of working with, and there'll be others, but I think it would be really interesting to invite some of these people to come and talk.
Yeah, no pressure, George and Eddie in our marketing team to get those people on our podcast. Yeah. Looking forward to that. So to sum up then, if we're going to sum up in, 3 key words for 2025 as we sat here in January, first week in January.
3 keywords.
What would you say?
For what? What
just like the inspirational words that will carry us through 2025.
I think it's be bold, have fun, and innovate.
Thank you very much.